impactful,
engaging,
supportive.
Be part of it.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie. I'm the Executive Director with the Federation of Calgary Communities. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're here to really get to know the Hatch and their great work with community fridges. I'm really excited about this project that we have partnered with. We have 5 Hatch people: Amanda, Gabrielle, Jasmine, Natalie, and Tasha are here to talk to us about community fridges. And I'm going to turn it over to them because they are the inspiration, the kind of the power behind the Hatch. So ladies, take it away.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. Good evening. Thanks for joining us today for this launch and learn on how to build a community fridge based on our handbook. As Leslie already said, my name is Amanda, and I'm joined here by Jasmine, Tasha, Gabri, and Natalie, and we're all part of the Hatch team, as well as Steph, who's not present here today. And we're really excited for you to be here with us today. Our goal for this presentation is that you leave here with the confidence to start a fridge of your own in your community, or just get excited about building something in your community and create connections. We're going to take you through the presentation today, and if you have any questions or comments, you can add them to the chat. We'll get to that at the end of the presentation. So we will leave all the answers to that point, the end of the presentation. So I'll get the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So we're going to start with our land acknowledgement. So as it says here, we acknowledge that the Hatch and our community fridge are situated on the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which consists of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai nations, as well as the Yarhe Nakota and Zutuna nations, which are separate nations. We also recognize that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. And as racialized settlers and uninvited guests in Mohkinstsis, we're grateful for the opportunity to live and work on this land. We would also like to recognize and thank the Calgary Foundation for providing funding for the handbook, as well as Friends of the Federation for being our charitable partner on this project. And of course, big thank you to the Rosscarroll Community Association for supporting our fridge project in so many ways. As Leslie said, she's here today from Friends of the Federation. So thank you, Leslie, as well. So firstly, I'm going to tell you about us. We, the Hatch, are a mutual aid group that promotes collective action and community collaboration. We were founded on principles of mutual aid and, you know, kind of the slogan, you may have heard this a lot, take what you need, give what you can. So we operate in a way that promotes collective action and community collaboration, not really hierarchical. And fundamentally, we believe that everybody deserves access to basic needs and services. It's often the most marginalized that are denied these in our current systems. So our aim is to create projects that build community solidarity while addressing issues like food insecurity, income inequality, and other accessibility related challenges in Calgary. And this one, I think, is for Tasha.
Yeah, hi everybody. As Ellie said, I'm Tasha with the Hatch, and I'm going to take you through our first introduction of, we want to baseline and just establish what is a community fridge. So it's built typically in an open space within a community. The purpose is that it's easily accessible for folks who need it and folks who want to donate. As Amanda said, the motto of our group and the motto of the fridge is to take what you need and leave what you can. So the idea is that it is, completely publicly available. It's helpful if it's located on, open city property. It can also be located on private property, again, as long as it's in a visible area that's accessible. And essentially, a community fridge is a free space for anyone to be able to access food and personal care items without having to prove any need. So we'll get into a little bit more of what the difference between a community fridge and some other services are. But the main thing is really being open, available, and accessible. For us, as we've gone through this project, we've really noted that the community fridge is a lot more than just a space. We've seen that it can provide an opportunity to prevent food waste. And in a lot of cases, we get food donations from a lot of different groups who are in sort of the reduced food waste space. It's also, of course, an opportunity to address food insecurity, which is a major problem around the world, but specifically here in Calgary and in Alberta. We all seen grocery prices. We all know that gap is just getting bigger and bigger. So this problem isn't going away. And then, of course, within our group, we've seen this be a great opportunity for the community to get involved and engage with members as well as volunteer and be a part of the project. So that's been very rewarding and inspiring for us to be a part of as well. So what is a community fridge versus a food bank? This is in the handbook, and it's an important piece that we pulled out because a lot of people may or may not know this, but it's a question we get a lot. And I think when you're in the space of trying to address food insecurity, people often resort to, why can't you just use a food bank, or I donate to the food bank all the time. What's the difference? So we broke this out in simple terms. So food banks, they are often located in inaccessible areas. So the one locally here, it's pretty hard to get to. It's not very accessible by transit. And that's just by the nature of what a food bank is and the size and the storage that they need. It's very hard for them to be located directly in communities or inner city. Food banks are also designed to create metrics. They thrive on being able to have data, which is a great thing for also addressing food insecurity. But as a result, you have to fill out paperwork and you have to be accepted in order to access the food. And with the food bank, the items may not be culturally relevant. So it's really, it's donation based, but because of the vast community it's trying to serve, a lot of the times there aren't culturally relevant food. And a lot of times it's being accessed by folks that are new to the area, who are used to, certain types of food. And then finally, it may only allow people to take food a certain number of times. So it is monitored and managed that way. And that can be a deterrent. So on the flip side of that, a community fridge, it exists to sort of address some of those gaps and shortcomings that a food bank might have. So together, I think we can address food insecurity. It's not meant to say one is better than the other, but with a community fridge, they're typically outdoors, more accessible, in higher traffic locations. And really the goal is to have one in the community for the community. So you're hopefully serving the members in and around the fridge. There's no questions asked when accessing the fridge, nothing to fill out. And then we have any type of safe food. So we do follow AHS guidelines where these are allowed in the community fridge, and we can offer a lot more variety. And typically when you're getting donations within the community, it's reflective of the food preferences of folks living in that area. And then finally, there's no limitations on how many times the fridge can be accessed or used. And again, it's really on the principle of, taking what you need and leaving what you can.
So I'm Jasmine, I'm another Hatch member. And now that you know a little bit about a fridge, about community fridges, we can start off with how to get started on a project like this. So we've come to learn that it might seem easy, maybe, but it requires a lot of teamwork to get a project like this started. But really, a small and mighty group is all you need. So you can look towards members of your community association, friends and family, or even neighbors to be a part of your team. But creating a team is important. And then once you have your team members gathered, you can do the fun part, which is create a team name. Our team name, The Hatch, emerged from wanting to represent a pantry, but also an open and accessible space. It can be a name that represents your current project while also representing future projects that you might start as well. So once you have your team name, we really recommend establishing a team agreement. So a team agreement, it's like a living document. It lays out the rules for everyone in the group to feel comfortable and safe. So usually it includes things like a mission statement, a description of roles and responsibilities, and group standards. And by living, that means that it can be changed to meet the preferences of each team member in your group. We like to keep on task by conducting monthly meetings, and that's a great way to communicate openly and effectively. So we usually have different roles during our meetings. We have a facilitator, we have a note taker, and a timekeeper, and this helps us to conduct meetings that go smoothly and follow our agenda. So the next step is determining, does your area need a community fridge? So now that you've created a team, you can think about finding a location for your fridge. Our team personally was unsure of which community to place our fridge in at first. So in order to determine the needs and wants of the community, we actually conducted both a physical and a virtual survey, which we distributed door to door actually amongst several communities that we were interested in. To help us identify their wants and needs. And then to better advertise this survey that we conducted, we placed physical flyers up in these neighborhoods as well. So based on the survey findings that we were able to gather, we were able to choose our community of Ross Carrick. They had a lot of support for our area based on some of our findings. So once you choose a community, your next step will be identifying a community partner that can host your fridge on their property. So for us, this was the Ross Carrick Community Association, but it's not always a community association. You could partner with a local business or an organization. And once you've thought of some potential partners that might be able to host your fridge, it's really a good idea to send out a formal proposal for potential partners that will encourage them to want to partner with you. So your formal proposal should include a bit about who you are, your project, how it will benefit the community, and what role they will play in your project as well. We've found over time that developing connections with both other community fridges in Calgary, as well as community members of the community you're placing your fridge in, is really important. It's about getting to know your community and being able to create a fridge that best serves the needs of that community. So this is what our flyer looked like that we posted around neighborhoods. It just has a bit about who we are and a QR code to access the survey. And then some examples of survey questions in the survey we handed out. Are there individuals within your community who would identify as food insecure? Would you support a community fridge in your community? And then a question about, have you or anyone you know ever experienced any of the following?
Awesome, thanks, Jasmine. So next we'll talk about building community connections. So community connections are essentially any partnerships with individuals or groups. So that could include the host of where the location of your fridge is. So that could be an association. It could also be businesses, as well as donors that provide monetary or food donations. So these partnerships play a really large role in maintaining the livelihood and the sustainability of the fridge and can provide a lot of benefits, including funding opportunities, as well as regular donations. So before you start building these community connections, it's really important to define what your goals are for your desired outcomes. So you might ask yourself, what are you looking for a partnership? So this might include regular donations, such as food and essential items from organizations, or maybe you're looking for volunteers that can help maintain the fridge on a regular or daily basis. And the reason why we want to be able to define those goals is that essentially you want to be able to make sure that these partnerships match well with yours and that you're able to accomplish what you're seeking. So once you have defined your goals, where can we find these partnerships? One of the main areas we love to look for is actually the space of where the fridge is located. And the reason being is that often people have a genuine connection to the space and generally want to see the area thrive. Lastly, once you have those connections, you want to be able to determine what the characteristics are of that partnership. So what are the roles and responsibilities? And then once you've defined those, it's important to have those regular meetings to be able to evaluate the relationship and make sure that you are, again, accomplishing those goals and reaching your desired outcomes. So once you've developed these relationships, we're going to focus on building or where to find a location. So ideally, the fridge should be somewhere with street-facing signage and it's visible from multiple angles, so you can get a greater amount of traffic. You do want high traffic, but not too close to main highways for safety reasons. You want it to be accessible by car, transit, bike, foot, or chair, so we can reach a larger audience. We want it to be public and well-known to members of your community. Near or attached to a building with electricity and wiring capacity for obvious reasons to be able to plug in your fridge. And lastly, ideally outdoors for 24/7 access. I know some fridges are indoors, but however, it kind of reduces some of that access for those who want to access the fridge during earlier or later hours. So here we'll talk about creating a build mockup. So here are some key elements that we focused on. However, your creativity can run wild. These are some things that we just found to be also useful logistically and creatively. So one thing is walls to cover all sides of the fridge and pantry. As you know, we live in very variable weather, so it's important to have those walls. We have a wall in between the fridge and the pantry side. Ventilation holes between the pantry and the fridge to allow that air to circulate for the winter and hot summer days. We also have well-sealed doors that open and close easily. So this also helps with reducing rodents from entering, but also keeping the space warm. We have a slanted roof for water, snow runoff. So during those days it gets warmer, we can reduce some of that water runoff. We also included pantry shelves at various heights, insulated walls, an electrical outlet, a wall heater behind the fridge compressor to keep it running in the winter months. We've definitely had the fridge freeze, so this really helped to keep it running during those times. A lockbox for cleaning and volunteer supplies so that volunteers are able to perform their responsibilities when they're coming in. An area for trash, recycling, compost bins. It could be inside or outside. We have a ramp because the fridge is on uneven ground, so that just helps to keep it even. So that might be different for you. And as well as signage, so that just makes it clear for everyone what their roles or responsibilities are, what the foods that are accepted and not accepted. So next we'll talk about City of Calgary permit requirements. So in our case, it was really great news. We didn't have to have a building and development permit for a city-owned community centers. However, in light of new news, we found that this is a case-by-case scenario. You might have to check with your planning department to be able to determine whether permits are required. Another thing is you will need an electrical permit and an inspection, and this is required if a new outlet is needed to be installed. You'll also want to connect with community neighborhoods, a liaison or a social worker to confirm you're in compliance with the latest building rules, and as well as complete the electrical inspection prior to plugging in your fridge at the space, in case any adjustments need to be made. And then next we'll talk about creating a build budget. So here are some things that we had. It could change for depending on what your fridge is needing. So we had a list for all construction materials, electrical permits and supplies, paint if we want to make the space look a little bit more vibrant, cleaning supplies and a lockbox, garbage, recycling, compost containers, a wall heater, fridge, and honorariums for our tradespeople. This is optional, but we really wanted to be able to reward those people who volunteered their time to build this beautiful space. So we recommend to keep your build budget as accurate as possible and obtain a pre-build quote from a hardware store for all construction materials. And this will be the biggest startup cost.
Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about building the fridge, where it should go, and you're kind of ready to actually start the process, how do you actually start? So the first thing is to obviously complete the build. This could take a few days or a few weeks. In our case, it did take quite a few weeks for us to finish our fridge build. The tradesperson that that built our fridge pretty much built it all by himself. So this could be very dependent on situations. The thing to note about this is that if your build is going to take longer than just a couple days, it is a good idea to have somewhere where you can store those supplies and equipment for the space. So in our case, we were able to store most of the supplies inside the community association building, inside of the community hall, because you obviously don't want it left out in the open in case someone takes your supplies. And then the other thing you're going to want to do after the build is actually finally done, before you move the fridge in or start anything else, it's really important to complete the electrical inspection and to make sure that everything works in terms of wiring for the space. Potentially wherever you have your fridge at, there could already be an existing electrical outlet outside of the building that you can pull power from. However, most likely you'll probably need to install a new plug within the actual fridge space itself, because you can't attach an extension cord, for example, to the fridge. The city won't allow that for obvious safety reasons. You don't want an electrical cord just hanging out of the fridge. So it's important to make sure that you get that done by an electrician that is a master electrician or someone that can take out that permit for you. And then the other thing that you want to be doing after you've completed the build, completed the electrical inspection, you know everything works and is ready to go, paint the space. So this is a great way to get someone in your community that's potentially an artist to help out, or to bring multiple people to help to paint the fridge. In our case, we had a local artist, Shayla, come and paint the space for us, and she did a beautiful design. This can, vary if your space is, for example, near a school. Maybe you get the school kids involved in painting the space. Really, whatever your community would like to do with making the space look nice and inviting and welcoming for people. Now, finally, once everything is done, everything has installed, all the shelves are up, then you're ready to install the fridge and plug it in and get going. A funny note for our project is that the first fridge that we got actually was too big for the doorway. So it sounds like an obvious note, but make sure that you measure how wide your doorway is, because fridges, although most of the times come in a standard size, there are variations for your fridge. So the next thing that you're going to want to do after you've put your fridge in is to add in your lockbox, which has all your cleaning supplies, and potentially we have a volunteer checklist on ours, which helps us to kind of keep our volunteers so they remember what they need to do when they come to the fridge space, and also for us to keep track of things like the temperature of the fridge, when the garbage is and things like that needed to be changed. And then also adding your waste bins in, and you can also add extra signage or extra bulletin boards as well if your space allows it and if your community would like to do that. So yeah, a note about an indoor versus outdoor fridge. We kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier in terms of the actual physical space being inside or outside. But the other thing to consider is what kind of fridge you're going to put in your space. So obviously, if your community fridge space is going to be inside, it doesn't really matter what kind of fridge you get. You can just go with the regular, standard kitchen size. Most community fridges are placed outdoors though, however, so it's important to kind of gauge the pros and cons of whether you get a regular indoor kitchen fridge or if you get a fridge that's actually graded to be outdoors. So the benefits with an indoor fridge is that it's oftentimes much cheaper than an outdoor fridge. It usually is in a standard size. However, again, as I mentioned, make sure you measure your doorways. And it usually comes with the freezer already attached either at the top or the bottom. So it's kind of already has exactly what you sort of need for your project. The downside to an indoor fridge, though, is that it can be prone to fluctuating in temperatures, especially in extreme heat and cold, which we've experienced a lot with our fridge. And so this may result in the fridge needing to be replaced sooner. The benefits of having an outdoor fridge instead is that the fridge is actually built to be outside. So it's much more durable. It's less likely to need replacing. Usually, it can even be outside, oftentimes with minimal insulation and minimal heat added. However, it does come in various sizes. So if you don't purchase your fridge before you build the space, you might have issues trying to match the size of the fridge to the space that you have built. And then a lot of outdoor fridges don't actually have freezers attached. So you might have to consider if you would get a big chest freezer, or how you would maybe work that out. We found that a freezer is really useful for community fridge space, especially because we get a lot of donations of things like bread. So we really do recommend having a freezer in your space. And then the other thing is the other aspects of an outdoor fridge as well is that it's often much more expensive and it can be harder to find used versus indoor kitchen fridges. We were able to find ours on Facebook Marketplace. So. Okay, so funding the fridge. So now that you have the fridge sort of up and going, now how do we maintain the fridge? How do we continue to keep the project sustainable? And also to cover a lot of those startup build costs, which are going to be the most expensive. So you can access funding from multiple sources. We recommend looking at community grants. You can also host food drives or have other people host food drives for your fridge, or businesses can also host donation boxes and volunteers can pick them up when they're full. We've also attended a couple markets and events where we promoted our community fridge and people were able to donate, or they signed up to they also dropped off donations, or they can also sign up to volunteer. We've also ran some online fundraisers, either through our personal networks or publicly through our mutual aid group. We ran one over the holiday season, which was quite successful. And then having sort of that goal is really helpful for people and kind of motivates them more to donate, we found. And then another thing that you can also obviously encourage is just monetary donations at any time of the year. So we have e-transfer, we also have Patreon set up. Those are kind of our two main places that people can donate monetary funds to. We also have a GoFundMe as well. However, a lot of people are not donating to go through GoFundMe as much anymore because of the fees. So we do encourage people to donate to us directly using e-transfer. And then another thing that we found that we often did at our markets or events, you can also host these online. Online is doing a raffle or a giveaway of some sort. Again, the idea of potentially winning something often makes it so that people are going to donate or buy a ticket. And we often we collaborate a lot with local businesses where we can to get those local prizes. So it's something that's more unique and people feel better supporting it because it's also supporting local businesses. So that's another great way that you can access funding. And then there's a lot of pros and cons to these options as well. I kind of didn't mention for community grants, so just go back up to that quickly. But for community grants, they're a really good way to get a large sum of money, especially when you're thinking about how you're going to cover the cost of the build, because that's going to be the most expensive. The only thing with community grants is that it's a little bit hit or miss on whether you're going to be successful in receiving the grant or not. For community grants, there's not often times where you get partial amount of money. You either usually get the funds or you don't. So it can be not as much of a regular stream of funding as compared to the other sources. We also, because the Hatch ourselves are not actually an incorporated organization, we partnered with the Federation, for example, to have this workshop in our handbook. And then for the build, we partnered with the Community Association, and so we were able to apply for grants through their nonprofit status to fund the fridge. And then it's important to create a system to manage your funding. So we use just a Google form and then basically a spreadsheet to keep track of how much money we're spending and what we're spending it on. It's also, if you have a team, for example, where multiple people are purchasing items for the fridge, it's also good to have a system so that you can tell who you need to pay back for things, and we can make sure that we're keeping track of that. So no one is willingly just giving their money away without having that organized in some way. And the other thing too, we recommend usually you have, depending on whether your organization is incorporated or not, oftentimes there's usually one person that manages the finances and provides an update, at every monthly meeting, for example, of the status of the finances and where we're at, so that we can all be on the same page with what we're able to spend funds on and how much we're able to spend. And lastly, we recommend leveraging your personal networks and community support. The people that you already know are going to be oftentimes your biggest supporters. So reaching out to friends and family is a great way to get funds for the fridge. And then also, as we mentioned earlier, the people within the community oftentimes want to see the project succeed because it's in their neighborhood. A lot of people will have that motivation to support the project. So it's good to also advertise in things like community newsletters, for example, or to attend events within the community to kind of promote and share that your fridge is in the neighborhood. Go to the next slide. Okay, so maintaining the fridge. So volunteers are key. Without our volunteers, we would not be able to maintain the fridge and basically to keep it running all this time. So it's really, really important to create a volunteer network. Even within your team, if you have 5 to 6 people in your team, as we do, it's still not enough to keep checking on the fridge every day. So it's important to build a network of volunteers. We have around 25 to 30 volunteers that help us with cleaning the fridge, picking up donations, spreading the word as in marketing and helping us with advertising. So it's good to have a big group of volunteers. One way for you to find volunteers is to use social media. We use social media a lot to call out for volunteers. We even before our fridge was actually built, we were already calling out for volunteers to kind of start building that network even before the fridge space was built. This can also be helpful because, again, people like the idea that there's something going to happen, or there's a goal that they're working towards. So they often feel really motivated to sign up to volunteer when they know a project is about to happen. We also posted flyers and again posted in our community newsletters to build our volunteer team. It's important to create a sign-up system that's accessible. So for us, most of our sign-ups come through our Google form, which is accessible online. When we attend in-person events, we usually bring a paper form of our sign-up as well. So if people don't have access to the internet or don't have, for example, a phone where they can take photos and scan a QR code, they can still sign up to volunteer and we can send them an email later. And then it's important to establish and support your volunteer team. So I kind of talked more about establishing your team already, but supporting the volunteer team. So we have a group chat that we use, and in our group chat, people send photos of the fridge at every check. So we have 2 to 3 checks every day. And it's important in the group chat to have healthy conversations, whether it's about the fridge or getting to know your volunteers a little bit more. We also recently held a volunteer appreciation. We had planned to do it closer to when the fridge had turned 1 year old, but things kind of got pushed, especially it's nicer to kind of celebrate when the weather is warmer, and we opened our fridge in November. So yeah, we recently had a volunteer appreciation event, which was great because a lot of the volunteers we actually have never met in person before. We're often used to just talking to them through the group chat. So it's also important to do events like that, even if you're not able to, or you don't have the funds to provide a gift or, do anything big. Just hosting something small is a nice way to get to know your volunteers. And then some of our main kind of volunteer roles are to clean and to stock the fridge and pantry. So as I mentioned, we have 2 to 3 checks per day where we have volunteers come and clean the space and take a photo so that we can kind of see how much items are in the fridge. If we've gotten a big donation or if we're kind of low on donations, we can also use those photos on social media to promote the fridge, whether again it's that we've received a large donation and we can thank people for donating, or that we can kind of try to encourage people to come and donate. They also, during this cleaning shift, also do things such as emptying the recycling and the compost, and also reorganizing the pantry so that people are easily able to find items in the space if it's really full. And then the other thing is stocking the fridge and pantry. So we do have some volunteers that will drive and pick up donations for us and stock the space. A couple places that we'll talk more about places that you can look to for those donations, but it's really important to connect with local food donors. So whether this is local businesses or restaurants or food distributors. So we have a relationship with one fairly large food distributor in Calgary called Tree of Life that donates items to us every week or every 2 weeks. And then we also have partnerships with Leftovers, for example, which is another food rescue organization. And then it's important as well that we're referring to our food and safety guidelines for donations. We don't accept anything that is, we don't accept any raw meat or raw seafood, which are kind of the main things. So yeah, just making sure that we're following the guidelines and that our volunteers, when they go to pick up, are aware of the guidelines as well. The next slide. So now we're going to tour you through the fridge space virtually. Hopefully this goes well, fingers crossed. It's a video, so sometimes there are technical issues. And then after that, we'll wrap up.
The Ross Carrick Community Fridge is located right outside the Ross Carrick Community Hall, just to the right of the building. There are 2 doors to the community fridge. The fridge is on the left side, the purple door, and the pantry is on the green side. And one of our members, Amanda, here is just going to be filling the pantry. So we'll just show you the pantry here. So as you can see, both doors have hold down handles, which is important for accessibility. And Amanda's just filling the pantry here. So our pantry has 3 shelves. We recently extended the shelf on the bottom as we did have a little bit too much room in the pantry. So people were able to close the door behind them and stay in the pantry for an extended amount of time, which is not necessarily safe for that person or for people coming to the fridge. There is light in the field. However, we found that there was not quite enough light specifically in the community fridge. So we did get this light wired in pretty recently, which helps a lot, especially in the winter and at night when our volunteers and people are coming to visit the fridge. We also have 2 vent holes in the pantry that go to the fridge side because there's a heater on the fridge side, and the vent holes just help to distribute the heat between both sides of the structure in the winter to keep things warm, and then in the summer to have better airflow. We also have our garbage, recycling, and compost bins on the bottom of the pantry, and they are looped together with a cable lock, as we did have a couple issues with people taking the bins early on. Your community association might have large dumpsters at the back of the building, as does this one, so our volunteers empty these bins regularly. Lastly, on the pantry side, we have our volunteer cleaning box where we have cleaning supplies and we give the code to our volunteers. We also have a clipboard here so we can see who has been at the fridge and if it's been checked on. So we had an amazing local artist paint the fridge space for us, Shayla. And this is a great way to also get your community involved through painting or decorating the space. We'll open the fridge side now. So this side just has the fridge in it. As you can see, we have a lot of different posters on the fridge telling people about the fridge, what items we accept, how you can donate, and how you can get involved. You can't see it, but there is a heater behind the fridge, and that makes sure that the compressor keeps running during the winter time. The whole entire structure is also insulated on the interior, and this all just helps so that the fridge can continue to run in the winter time. As you can see here, this is where the plug-in is for the fridge, as well as the heater and the light. And there's also the vent hole on the right that goes to the pantry side.
We do recommend as well attaching a thermostat to the heater so that you can control the temperature for the heater, especially in the summer. Our thermostat recently broke, so we'll have to replace that in when it gets a little bit warmer. So we'll open our fridge here. As you can see, it's pretty empty. It was full yesterday, but we have a lot of people that utilize the fridge. Our fridge is just a standard kitchen size. We also have a freezer on the top. And we do have thermostats inside the freezer as well as inside the fridge. And we do ask our volunteers to check that daily. To try to increase the accessibility of the space, we did add a ramp as the structure is a little bit raised. We recommend salting or pouring down gravel in the winter because it does get quite slippery. As well, our freezer is on the top of the fridge, which again makes it a little bit difficult if you're in a chair or you have other accessibility needs. So if possible, we recommend trying to find a fridge with the freezer on the bottom, though that's not always possible. So that's the end of our fridge tour. Please let us know if you have any questions at all. One thing to add as well is that our roof is slanted to help with water runoff in the winter and when it rains.
So that was the tour. We are now reaching the wrapping up portion of this presentation. And now that we're here, we just want to remind you or reinforce that ultimately at the end of the day, all of this mutual aid for us, it's more than just food. It's also about providing a welcoming, non-judgmental, and accessible space for anyone to access the fridge without surveillance or monitoring, meaning that nobody's asking you any questions, nobody's checking how many times you're using the fridge or anything. It should have no barriers and it should focus on serving the community's needs. And through this project, we hope to involve an understanding of food justice and food insecurity. Like we said in the beginning, take what you need, give what you can. No judgment. We hope that this guide and this presentation can help you build and maintain a community fridge, but also foster a community within your area. We ourselves continue to learn from this project, and we're really excited to see what others do as well with this information. Our guide is available digitally as well. We will send that link below if we haven't already. Maybe we can send it again in the chat, and it's also available on our social medias. Not sure if we're going to have another one of these sessions or not, but if we do, we will be sure to share those on our social media, which are Instagram. You can find us there for updates on the fridge, community outreach, and other exciting projects that we're working on. Our Instagram is @thehatchyyc, or you can also send us an email, thehatchyyc@gmail.com, and that is another great way to reach us. Other than that, this is a great time to now ask questions. We do have some additional resources that we use for this presentation as well, so we just like to share those just on the next slide. So these are just some great resources that you can check out on the topics of mutual aid or community fridges and the legality and safety of food donations, which are some of the most frequently asked questions that we get with a project like this. Other than that, we are open to questions now, so you can put them in the chat if you'd like, or I suppose if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can also do that. Even if you don't have questions, please stick around till the end, because we do have a survey, very short, 5 questions that we'd like you to fill out about the quality and how this presentation went. So yeah, any questions?
I think, Banja, you asked what kind of heater that we use. So we just use a wall heater from Home Depot. I don't know exactly what the brand is, but yeah, it's just like a plain wall heater, and we had our electrician install it while he was also installing the plug. So that's a really good way to get that done if you're not well versed in sort of electrical work or in the heating aspect. because the wall heaters can be a little bit more complicated. Like it's not as simple as just putting a plug in. It usually wires in directly. So.
Which, on that note, it's good to keep in mind when you're building the space that the space accommodates enough room to fit both the fridge and the heater. So if you look behind the fridge, the heater doesn't look like your standard heater. It kind of looks like a plate that fits at the back, but we almost had trouble with almost not having enough space to fit it back there. So do keep that in mind as well.
Another question, sorry. Did you end up using an indoor or outdoor fridge?
It's an indoor fridge that we have. And yeah, it's more than a year old now, I guess almost a year and a half old. So still going strong with the help of the heater.
Yeah, it's made it through. Like we've had those weeks of -40, which are uncharacteristic, but keep happening. So we have our volunteers check the temperatures every time they go, and it's something we're always monitoring, and kind of keeps us up at night a little bit because
yeah,
the compressor can be running pretty hard.
Yeah, and I would say like the summer is almost worse because like in the winter, if the fridge shuts down, things freeze, but it's not the end of the world. Whereas in the summer, sometimes the fridge compressor can't keep up with the heat. So we have had times where we're like really watching the stuff in the fridge, but hopefully by the time that happens, your fridge is more established, so the food comes and goes really quickly. Like oftentimes we rarely have stuff in the fridge that's staying for more than 1 to 2 days, so it's not a huge concern. But yeah, that is something to definitely think about when you first start out, is the heat.
And having the doors is a must-have, or can it be an open concept, or it's better not to do it in Calgary?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend the doors. 1 for the weather, and then 2 for like if you have any rodents or anything. Yeah, the doors are pretty important. Like even there's another fridge on Center Street, and initially they didn't have doors, and they actually put their doors on every winter and then take them off again, which you could do that as well, but it's kind of like annoying. So if you're able to build a space starting with doors, I would recommend that. Yeah.
And they did have issues with rodents, which
yeah,
isn't ideal.
Why we added the doors.
Somebody asked a question about fire suppression in the chat. I don't know if that was already addressed or not, but since our structure is attached to the hall, the Rosscare Community Hall, they've been very supportive of us all throughout the project. And one of those big supports that they give us is that we're actually just covered with their insurance. So, I mean, that's one way I can think of answering that question. If you're just concerned about that, like, we are covered under their insurance. So they were really nice in adding us onto that. Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, I would just add, we don't have any like official emergency plans, to be honest. We didn't really have to put anything in terms of like emergency like fire at all, mostly because the heater is also like an indoor wall heater. It's not like the fridge and the heater are both indoor items. So if you imagine like if you had a heater and a fridge in your house, there is a risk of a fire, but there's not really like, I don't know if you personally have an emergency plan, but yeah, we don't have a plan for that. And yeah, that's kind of the answer to the question, basically.
And
we don't
have
a fire plan.
Interesting question, and something maybe we should even just think about an emergency plan, if anything, in the future. I think Astrid, you have your hand up.
I do, yes. I have a couple of questions about the financial side. I think you mentioned e-transfers. So I'm more curious about, do you do that through the community association to get those funds in, or how is that set up? And then additional to that, I had a question about, the spending form. I think you were talking that you have a form that you submit expenses. So is that just to like have all of the expenses submitted through one specific spot? Yeah, those are a couple of questions.
You want to take that, Amanda?
I can, yeah, I can answer that. As for the first part, so we created a bank account that we can receive e-transfers through. It's just like a personal one though, because we're not like a legal entity. So it's under one of our names and we use it to manage the money. The way, so e-transfers just from like anyone or any organization, like anyone that wants to just give us money can transfer us very easily. But when it comes to applying for grants and other things that require you to be a registered organization of some sort, because a lot of grants and other money sources like that will require that. We do that through the Ross Care Community Association. So because they are a nonprofit legal entity, that's another part of our agreement that we have with them, that they're able to apply on our behalf, and then whatever money they receive for that, they'll just give to us for the purposes of the fridge. Sorry, the second question was about
how your team submits expenses. I think a form was mentioned, and I just wanted to confirm if that was the case.
Yeah, we sorry.
Sorry, it's like your lists are moving. I was like, are you go ahead?
Okay. Yeah, so we just have like a Google form, and then that Google form like populates into a spreadsheet. You and I know lots about Google Forms and spreadsheets from our other projects, but yeah, it's basically like that. And it pretty much just keeps track of like what we're spending money on. And it's pretty much just for us because like as Amanda said, we're not like a legal entity, so we don't have to submit that like paperwork really. But the other thing too is that there's 6 people on our team, so sometimes I buy stuff or sometimes Jasmine buys stuff, so it's just like a good way to also keep track of like who we owe money to. Yeah.
Any more questions? Yep.
What are the rules for the food you can leave in the fridge?
So, the food that you can have in the fridge, you mean? Yeah, so basically what we cannot have is anything that's raw meat. So, like chicken, seafood products, beef, anything like that, we cannot have. We also cannot have food that is prepared in non-industrial kitchens or non-HS approved kitchens. So, if somebody's like, I made a big batch of chili and I want to share with the community, it's like, sorry, no, because, it was not an AHS approved kitchen, or, if it's like, if our volunteers know, like as part of our guidelines, if somebody like leaves leftovers that are like half, it's like, no, like we won't. If you order, like accidentally order like too many skipped dishes, you can like leave the untouched, but not leftovers, not raw meats of any kind, no alcohol either. And yeah, no food that was not prepared in an HS approved kitchen.
But
We also monitor expiry dates pretty closely as well. So we make sure that we remove anything that's past date with our
Like
volunteers.
yeah.
But all of this is outlined in the AHS food guidelines, which I think is somewhere in our handbook as well. But it's
in the
it's a really right, like it's an easy reference document that you can find that's very clear about what's allowed and what's not.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we just really encourage like make sure you post that on the fridge, on anything that you're publicizing, like if you have social media or anything, make sure you put that out there, and then just like that your volunteers are all aware of that, and then you're making sure that you're doing your due diligence too, if by chance like if AHS ever came and asked. Natalie found the exact page 37 of our
handbook.
It has like a whole chart about what we can and can't take. So
I think it's also worth mentioning that we take like hygiene products as well, so toothbrushes, toothpaste. So we didn't mention this, but there's a lot of local dentists in the area that will donate toiletries and things like that. But there is a line where sometimes people will start to like leave housewares and other items. And so we're very clear, like, we do not accept housewares. We're not, we're not a dumping ground for different things. We've had car seats, I think someone left a car seat. So all with good intentions, but we try to be very prescriptive of like, what the purpose of the fridge and pantry is for the community. And we haven't had too many problems, but that sometimes those things creep in and our volunteers are aware of that.
Is there a place to get a printed off book? Handbook?
Yeah. Jasmine and Amanda, do we have any extras? I actually don't know if we have a couple. Yeah. So we have a few extras of our hard copies. We initially made all the hard copies that we got printed. We sent them to community associations in the city. So whatever community association you're a part of, they probably have a copy, like a paper copy that they might lend to you. Otherwise, you could send us an email after, and we can arrange to give you guys a copy because we have a couple left, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a question that just came in the chat from Sarah asking, what have been the biggest challenges you've had in managing the community fridge program, and how have you resolved them? I feel like we all might have different
answers. That's a good question. Yeah, we've had quite a few challenges. I would say like from even before we started the project, it took us just over a year to actually get the fridge like approved for us to even start building it. So we worked a lot with the community association, we worked a lot with the city and the planning department. We worked a lot with the counselor's office also to kind of figure out, did we need permits? And then initially we were going to need to pay like almost $1,000 in permits. So we talked a lot with the planning department and the counselor's office about our project and how we don't have the funds to pay for this, and sort of the size of the project and what it actually entailed. So that took a long time. Like that was a pretty big challenge. And then figuring out where we were going to put our fridge, we walked, as Jasmine mentioned, like a bajillion steps to hand deliver flyers to figure out, to make sure that we were going to put the fridge in a place that really was supported, because that's, I would say, one of the biggest takeaways from this is that if your fridge is in a neighborhood where people are either not using it in terms of donating to it or coming to check on it, then it's not gonna thrive. If the people in the neighborhood don't want it there, then it's not going to be a good time. So I would say those are kind of like the biggest things that we did to sort of mitigate some of those challenges. And then obviously when the fridge didn't fit, once we built the space, actually before that, our carpenter broke his leg. So we had to delay our build like numerous months because he broke his leg. So he wasn't able to build the space, obviously. And then our fridge didn't fit. So that was another challenge. Luckily, we have a couple other projects that we're a part of that also have extra fridges. So we ended up just swapping out our fridges with a store that we also volunteer with. So that was how we resolved that problem. Those are kind of like the beginning ones I can think of. And then if you all want to
I think there's like, to your point, Gabby, there's different stages of the project. So there's all of the upfront challenges, and looking back now, you can laugh. We learned, we wrote them in the handbook, so hopefully no one else has to go through them. But I would say now that the fridge is operational, the challenges are different because the structure is there and all of those things are in place. Obviously we have a fridge that fits, but I think now it's weather is just keeping the fridge alive, making sure in the winter the food in the pantry doesn't freeze, because any of those canned goods, when they freeze, that's game over. And then in the summer, keeping everything cool enough. So I think just the temperature management is a challenge. An ongoing challenge is obviously keeping the fridge stocked. So I think Gabby mentioned, or someone mentioned 1 or 2 days. It can be hours. We'll have the fridge fully stacked, and in a couple hours, it's totally cleared out. So I think that's a challenge, for a group like ours who's trying to provide this service to the community. It's hard to see it. There's a need, but it's hard to see it clear out that quickly. And knowing that we can't meet the full need just on our own. So we need more community fridges around Calgary and an area to help us, offset some of that challenge. And then I think people don't realize that it also takes some level of funding. And our principle of being mutual aid is we don't want to be a registered nonprofit. We want to continue in the mutual aid space. So there's a limit to what we can apply for, just based on the type of group we are. There's also sometimes a bit of skepticism around mutual aid and just, giving money to a group and not getting your tax receipt, for example. I think just getting over some of the societal hurdles that come with that. And that also leads to stocking the fridge. So we need funds. We get a lot of donations, but we do need to do frequent grocery shops. Groceries are super expensive right now. And so what we're able to put into the fridge can be a challenge. And then we've, just sometimes you have garbage or things are broken. I think one thing we didn't anticipate was the doorknobs kept breaking. So like they get used a lot. They're indoor doorknobs and they weren't like industrial grade. So you don't realize like the wear and tear on the structure and trying to keep that maintained, because if you have a non-working doorknob, the door doesn't open, people can't get food. So a lot of that has come with, now that the fridge is fully operational and it's being used often, some of the wear and tear on the structure itself. And again, repairing and finding those things cost money. So it's making sure that your financials are secure, that you can, provision for some of these things to go a little bit sideways.
And that kind of brings it back to maintaining those connections, because those connections are going to help you a lot. Like, we're so thankful for a carpenter who wasn't just there when we first built the fridge, but has been able to help us throughout some of these challenges. Like, on top of the doorknobs not working, when it got too cold, the doors have a difficult time shutting. So it's navigating those difficulties. And with funding too, you can really find reliable sources of donations if you try and look for connections in your community. For example, like we've mentioned, we have some connections with some distributors, or even maybe like a local bakery. Do they have extra donations that they would otherwise throw out? It's really been helpful to just connect with other people and see where they can help us out, because it's hard to keep that funding going completely. So
I think, yeah, I would just add also from like more of like a social aspect, obviously, the fridge, because it's not monitored at any time, people can come and go as they please. So we've had, I wouldn't necessarily say they're issues, because they kind of turn out to be like non-issues, but we've had some things where people will send us angry emails about how they stocked the fridge, and then they came back an hour later and everything was gone, and they know that it was this one person in this one car that took all the stuff. So we've had that a few times, but with that, it kind of comes with education of just, you don't really know that person. Did you have a conversation with that person? Potentially maybe they're getting food for other people in their building. Maybe they know a lot of seniors in the neighborhood. I've talked to lots of people who come to the fridge who say, my neighbor is, 80 years old. All he really wants is 2 loaves of bread, but he can't, it's really hard for him to get out when it's -40 out, so there's those stories. And then every now and then there might be 1 or 2 people who do take everything from the fridge, and they, maybe they don't need it all. Or maybe they do, but you have to kind of get past that judgment. So that's been a little bit of a challenge for some people, especially to like our volunteers who see the fridge every week, every day, and we can kind of see through the photos as well. Sometimes that can be tough for them to kind of to see that. And then, as Tasha mentioned, a lot of the wear and tear. And then sometimes we have had things broken where, you just assume someone maybe was having a bad day, or the fridge was empty and they were angry and they ripped the hook off the wall. But they're just kind of, in the grand scheme of things, minor things. And for us as a group, we all come from more relatively well-off backgrounds compared to people who need to use the fridge. So we're able to kind of repair those things, either, as we mentioned, through our funds or through our community connections. I mentioned in the video too, like we did have some people who were staying in the fridge, trying to stay in the fridge like overnight, for example, because they didn't have anywhere else to go, which is completely a fair point if you don't have anywhere else to go and it's -40 outside. But obviously we also don't want that to be something that is potentially a hazard for that person, because the space is also like, you're really not supposed to be locking yourself in a space with a kitchen appliance, because actually, going back to the fire thing, that could be a hazard. And then also you're maybe limiting access for other people to go to the fridge. So that was one thing that we mitigated by kind of extending the fridge out so that, it's still an accessible space, but people now are not able to kind of close the door behind them and potentially stay in the pantry for a long time. So those are kind of like little things that we did. The community association actually also hosted a harm reduction education series, which was really great because we do have some people who, we are close to the train station, so we do have some houseless people who come to use the fridge every now and then as well. And sometimes they're going through, you know, other mental health challenges or addiction challenges. So it was good for our volunteers and people in the community to kind of get more of that education too.
Another question came in the chat. How do you address fears that the community fridge will be attracting crime? I see this question come up when pitching for the project. Yeah, that is a common question. Natalie, you haven't said anything. Do you want to address this one?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess there's always going to be this fear of attracting crime to the space. I think a lot of it does come from it being a potential. However, there have been a lot of community fridges in the city, and a lot of this fear doesn't emerge too often. This space is a community space, and a lot of people do genuinely want to see it thrive and do well. And so even though it is a fear, we personally haven't had this challenge come up. And also speaking to other community other community fridges, it hasn't been a problem so far. But yeah, does anyone else have anything else to add on top of that?
I think when we pitched the project, part of your question was sort of like you're getting this often when you're starting to pitch the idea. One thing that we spent a lot of time on is sending out those flyers and surveys to the community. So one that helped us kind of narrow down where a good location might be, where the need is, but it also informed people of who we are, what we're doing, what a fridge is. So it was kind of a two-way street where I think we felt a little more secure bringing this up. And you know, we approach other community associations that were a little less supportive, and thankfully, you know, we were able to find one that was really on board and has been, I would say, like blown us out of the water with the support that they've been able to give us. So I think it's finding those community partnerships and also informing folks of what you're doing and who you are, and you know how. I think we have a few other projects within the city of fridges and pantries and the little library, so we have a few of these similar things popping up, and you can kind of point to those as, you know, areas of success, as data points to be like, this is working, the city needs it, and we're a volunteer group willing to put this idea forward. And you know, to be frank, haters gonna hate. So if you find that you're with, you know, if you're getting that pushback, that might not be the association for you to bring it up, or the community for you to thrive in anyways. And so it's a good indication that, you know, maybe you should put your energy into, you know, another area or another association that is kind of aligned with the same values.
I didn't even oh, sorry, go ahead, Natalie.
Sorry. Something to add. It's not really a crime per se, but it was a question that came up in a previous presentation. A community association had been like, kids were kind of doing some pranks and taking some of the toothpaste and kind of you know, pouring it everywhere around. So I think it all comes down to using it more of like an educational opportunity, having kids involved and allowing them to appreciate the space. And it's not just a playground, it's actually a space that people use every day. And so it's all really about that, spreading that education. What's the purpose of it? What is it addressing? So I think that's really important. And I think one way to address it is, again, having kids bring in like a can or two, and again, really appreciating that space, because it all, again, starts when they're young, and so they can fully understand it and be able to share that information with their family, their friends.
Yeah, for sure. I was just gonna add, I didn't even add, like, that was another challenge that we had at the beginning, was that we approached two other, like 1.5 other community associations about the fridge. And yeah, like the first one completely flat out like turned us down, like had a whole list of concerns. And it was sort of like, at that time, our team was kind of just forming, and it was kind of like we had to make a decision of whether we try to push through with this group, this association that was like maybe not as supportive, and maybe we can kind of convince them, or do we look at somewhere else? And it ended up that looking somewhere else was actually a much better option, and ended up being much better than versus trying to like pull teeth with someone else that maybe wasn't really fully into it. And then also the other thing about crime too that I would say that is kind of like a preventative aspect is having that volunteer network. So as we mentioned, we have volunteers that check on the fridge like 2 to 3 times a day. So just the fact that you have people coming and going from the space quite often also will decrease any kind of crimes or things happening. And again, like the community association is a great place because it's usually a pretty busy building. Usually there's other programs going on throughout the day and even into the evenings. So again, having kind of that high traffic really does help. And then, you know, just having like basic things like good lighting is also important, you know, clear pathways, bright signage so that it's, you know, visible from the street, for example, like, and when you're driving by at night, you can see the fridge from the street, and it's across the field. So it's, you know, lit up. Our fridge is bright white and our doors are really colorful. So that's another thing too, just from kind of like more of a physical sense that you can do to sort of prevent anything from happening.
And you might get like pushback, not just from community associations, but I'm sure you've heard of pushback from community members that think, oh, you're going to attract this type of person and this type of person into my community. They're going to start robbing our houses and this and that. And I think it's not just about talking about who we are and what our goal is, but what are these people who come to our fridge needing? They're needing food. So it's about informing them about our population and what the need is and what their true intentions are. Like, people are coming to the fridge to get the food because they're in need. And I think it's just fighting the stigma that's attached to these sorts of people that they are blaming for other
and a
things.
lot of times these people like live in their neighborhood, right? Like they're their neighbors that need to access the fridge. We have a lot of people like within Ross Carrick who access the fridge. There are some people who travel far to come because there isn't one in their neighborhood, but it just means that, you know, this is a project that's maybe important for other communities to look into doing. So yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
I had a question about your process setting up, getting it set up through leftovers. Was that a lengthy process to like get that rolled out, or how did that go about?
No, it was pretty quick. We just applied online, and then they just sent us an email. And we have a volunteer who also volunteers with leftovers. So she often will pick the routes that are for the hatch. So then she's like, she basically does a drop off to the fridge at least once a week. And she's great. So yeah, that's kind of one way that you can also, I don't want to say take advantage of the system, but like use it to kind of your benefit, if you have a volunteer that's willing to also like sign up. And leftovers like also doesn't have any minimums, I don't think. So, you know, it's kind of nice because businesses are already on there. So it's just like an easy way for them to also organize a donation versus you maybe planning it out on your own. So yeah.
Thank you.
That actually made me think of something else, is having people in your volunteer network that drive and have vehicles, because there's a lot of people that walk to check it out the fridge because it's in their community. But all of those pickups and drop-offs, and then oftentimes where we get donations, it's a pretty big trek to these warehouses and to, you know, even to grocery stores in some cases. So having, we actually have a separate thread of our volunteers who are willing to do pickups and drop-offs, and live in or work in other parts of the city that's convenient for them. So that's another thing to consider when you're, you know, asking for volunteers or put a call out, to have some folks that have that mobility. Yeah. These are great questions. Thanks for the conversation, everybody. I think there's nothing else. So now we have some questions for you. We just have a quick poll that's going to pop up. I think, is it Natalie? Are you going to pop that up on your side? Or Amanda will pop it up on her side. And so please just don't take too long, you know, just fill out the questions. Let us know if there's any feedback or things we could do better. And then you can exit the chat, and we thank you all for your participation and for attending this evening.
Yeah, thank you
Should
very
be
much.
on your screens now. You should be seeing that. So, yeah.
Maybe it's me, as an administrator. Is everyone able to access the long answers? The guests in the invite, are you able to fill out the answers? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, folks are finishing up answering all, and we'll keep it running until everyone is done. I just wanted to thank the Hatch. So Jasmine, Gabriella, Natalie, Tasha, and Amanda. Your group, and I know there's one more of you, have done an amazing job. And I know almost a year ago, you came to me as a volunteer group who took initiative and formed your group and wanted to do something for the greater community, produced the fridge in Ross Carrick, and then wanted to help more communities. And you know what, this has been an incredible experience for us, partnering with a group of volunteers who are inspired leaders. And I just want to thank you for trying to educate our network, for producing a resource that will live on. Tonight, we're also going to producing a video from this call. So we hope to get it out further than just the conversations we've had. We'd love to follow the Hatch's work and perhaps come back with a follow-up and maybe a panel with some of our community groups that have started a fridge and seeing how things are going for folks. So the Hatch, thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping our network. And for folks, I do believe we have someone here from Ontario that is looking into, perhaps having a community fridge in their own community. So thank you for everyone for attending, and thanks to the Hatch for delivering, on helping serve our fellow Calgarians and people experiencing food poverty. So thank you for all that you do, and keep up the good work volunteering. You're a true inspiration.
Impactful.
Engaging.
Supportive.
Be part of it.